Hello everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Beyond ROI, Getting Management to Approve Your DAM. Your presenter today is me. I'm Jon Hornstein, CEO of Modula4. I've been involved in digital asset management for 20 years. I've been on the vendor side, the integrator side, where I am now with Modula4, and also on the customer side. So I've been a department manager that's had to fight for a budget to get digital asset management system. So what I'm presenting here is learned both from my firsthand experience and also from working with our clients and them sharing their stories about the barriers they face getting a budget approval, as well as some of the strategies that they've used to help them succeed. So if you've been struggling to get budget approval for your DAM system, you're not alone. Since the recession in 2008, profits have been slowly but steadily recovering, but spending hasn't. Corporate cash reserves are now 50% higher than they were in 2007, even though we're back at about the same level of economic activity. So companies are holding on to their cash, they're not hiring more people, they're not investing in new systems if they can avoid it. So let's look a little bit about with traditional ROI justifications. They're basically making the case that digital asset management brings efficiency. It'll make your department, make your organization more efficient. But unfortunately, proving something is efficient isn't always enough to get budget approval. And there's a series of reasons for that. One is that budgets are competitions. So not only do you have to make a very strong case that there'll be significant return on investment in acquiring a digital asset management system, but that return on investment will be greater than other projects that are competing for that same budget. Also, the most valuable benefits of DAM are often the most difficult to articulate. If you've used a digital asset management system, then you know that while you can talk about all of the individual benefits that a DAM has, it's really the synergy of them all together that makes it so important and so critical and so valuable. And this isn't something that's very easy to show, just with numbers in a spreadsheet or to articulate in some other way. Let's talk a little bit about the decision makers. These are the ones who control the budgets, who write the checks. Generally speaking, they're going to be far from those whose day-to-day work life will benefit from a DAM system. So they're not going to have any of the kind of firsthand knowledge of what kind of benefit a DAM can bring. It's also not likely that they're going to understand the complexity of working with digital assets. So the huge number of file formats and converting between them, and issues like resolution and color space and metadata standards, preserving paths, such things like that. If they haven't worked with media assets, then they're probably not going to have a very good appreciation of how complex they are. Likewise, they're probably not going to see the true cost and therefore the true value of digital assets. So the amount of work and expense that goes into creating a photo shoot or a video shoot, for example, even a simple one, is pretty substantial. And even if you're just licensing images, the amount of research and time that goes into researching, negotiating usage rights if you have to do that as well, it can be a substantial amount of work and cost. And it's not always appreciated by those who just see the picture. They don't really know the story behind it, what it took to get that into your organization. And because of all of this, they tend to see DAM as an expense with only vague benefits. They understand that having things organized is better than not having things organized, and that having things protected and controlled is better than not having them protected and controlled. But really beyond that, they're not going to know about any of the specific benefits. Because people don't like to spend money on things that they don't understand. So part of your job is to get them to understand what digital asset management is, what it does, and how it benefits your organization. People also don't like to spend money if they don't think they have to. So you've also got to get them convinced that getting a digital asset management system is not an option and that it's a liability if you don't have one. So they have to spend the money to get a digital asset management system. So let's look at least briefly at some of the more traditional ROI arguments, which is what I call the hopeful arguments. So one is that it'll save time, and primarily this is around more efficient use of staff time. So there's all kinds of ROI calculators out there, which are essentially spreadsheets with formulas and labels, and you put in people's salary, estimate how much time they spend looking for things that they wouldn't have to spend that time if they had a digital asset management system. And it'll spit out a number saying, this is how much time is wasted, and then therefore, this is how much money we should have to invest in a digital asset management system. Sometimes this works, often it doesn't. Often it's just not enough, but it's a very useful exercise to do. Another aspect of saving time is that the time I would consider it high cost and low value, meaning that the people, or at least some of them who are spending the time looking for the assets, they might be art directors, designers, photo editors, video editors. And these are professional level positions with professional level salaries. And looking for files is an admin job at best. So it's fairly low value work. So the time you're saving is also time that can be put towards much higher value activities. And also, reusing is faster than recreating. So if you have a system that makes it easier to find things, you can then reuse them as opposed to taking the time to recreate something. Another related hopeful argument is that a dam will save money. So reusing is not only faster than recreating something, it's also cheaper. There can be very hard costs involved in recreating an asset. If you've got to restage a photo shoot, that's kind of on the extreme end, but that can be extraordinarily expensive. And a dam should also reduce any needless relicensing of images. So for example, if you've licensed a royalty-free image and you paid a fixed fee and you get unlimited usage, if you lose that file, typically you've got to repurchase or relicense that image. That's definitely a needless waste of money, and if you do it enough, it can be a significant waste of money. And a dam can also reduce infrastructure costs. At many organizations, the same file is replicated many different places, many different ways. It might be in different file formats, it might be at different resolutions, with a path, without a path, different color spaces, etc. And with most dams, you can just have a single master file, and then as you need different variations of it, you would just have those created on the fly. So depending on the number of duplicate files that you have, you can actually reduce your storage costs and therefore your infrastructure costs fairly significantly with a digital asset management system. And then the next line of hopeful arguments is that a dam will give you new capabilities. It'll let you do things that you couldn't do before. So one of them is faster time to market. Sometimes being quick makes all the difference in the world as to how effective something is. And sometimes things are only really worth doing if they can be done quick enough, where if it takes too long, it's not even worth the bother. You should also get better creative results with a dam. The idea is that if your creative team can reference work that's been done previously, that should help the work that they're doing now, either by making sure that what they do is fresh and doesn't repeat what's been done before, or by referencing work that was done previously so that you have a consistent look in a campaign or you're developing your brand in a consistent way. It can also provide improved support for sales and marketing if you can get them the material that they need to be more effective, and that can increase sales, and it can increase brand awareness and increase the leads that your marketing department generates. That's something new and better that a dam can do. Likewise, if your organization shares your assets with partners, if you can get them the right assets more quickly and more easily, then they should be able to more effectively resell your products or incorporate what your organization offers into what they sell. And lastly, there's the possibility of a dam actually creating new revenue streams. If you're in the position where you can actually charge your clients or your partners for access to the dam, for access to the assets in it, that might be enough to fund a dam on its own. or start a whole new business line, or at the very least mitigate some of the costs associated with deploying a digital asset management system. So those are the traditional ROI arguments. Those are the hopeful ones. And essentially, you're saying positive things will happen when we get a dam. But often fear is a stronger motivator. So this would essentially be saying terrible things will happen if we don't get a dam. So let's look at some of these, what I call the fearful arguments. So the first is replacing the cost of lost assets. So you're more likely to lose assets if you don't have a digital asset management system. So backing up without a dam is much more challenging. A dam, the collection of records, knows where the assets are. So it's much easier to do a comprehensive backup if you're doing it through a dam. And also having a lack of a central repository like a dam offers you increases the chances of losing individual assets. People can be using assets directly from their desktop or from removable media, and it never makes it to a central repository, so they never get backed up. So they end up being important because they get actually used in material, but you don't have a backup. So it increases the chances that they're going to get lost due to, user error or technical problems. And I talked earlier about how a dam lessens the odds you'll need to recreate if you can find something, and it also decreases the cost that would be associated with recreating an asset. And sometimes just flat out, the cost and time to recreate an asset is prohibitive, and sometimes it's even just impossible to do it. So you could end up losing forever an asset that is valuable to your organization. A dam also increases the risks of having your assets be unsecured. Not having a dam increases that risk. Because access to assets is difficult to control. Even if you do have everything stored on a central server, generally speaking, people can either have access or not. With a digital asset management system, you can give very granular control over what people can do. Maybe they can see it, but they can't download it, or they can download it, but only low res, or only with a watermark, etc. And it also makes controlling that access much easier. The use of unapproved assets can be at least embarrassing, and it can also be costly. And not having a reporting or an audit trail is dangerous. Most dams support this to one extent or another, and it's dangerous because if there is an asset that's misused, without a reporting or audit trail, you can't always find out, well, how did it get used, the who, what, when, and where. And that always leaves open the possibility that if you can't find out those details, you can't prevent it from happening again in the future. Related to that, another fearful argument is the exposure to liability. It's difficult to access rights information without a dam, and a dam conversely makes that very easy. So you can either have fields in your dam that contain rights information, and or you can have copies of model releases and licensing agreements as Word documents, as PDFs that are in your dam and related to the actual media assets. So when you find that image, when you find that video, you can have the rights information at your fingertips. Without a dam, that's very difficult to do. And the misuse of assets can lead to fees, and it can lead to fines, which can be fairly substantial. And in extreme cases, it can even lead to legal action. And no organization wants that, and hopefully they'd be willing to throw some good money at preventing that from happening. Lack of a dam can also be harmful to employee retention. Some organizations don't care too much about that, but some care a lot, and I believe that they should. The effort spent looking for digital assets without a dam can lead to frustration. It's not something that's fun to do, and not something that's fun to do over and over. And it's also dumb work. I talked earlier about the high cost, low value. This is not what people prefer to be doing. If you're a designer, if you're an art director, photo editor, etc., that's the work that you want to be doing. And what this really means is that management isn't giving the staff the tools that they need to succeed. And I mean, I'm a manager and I ask a lot from my staff, and the least I can do is give them the tools they need to succeed. And if management is not giving their staff the tools that they need to succeed, then it's really sending the message that the management just really doesn't care about them. And that's not very good for retention. Without a dam, you also increase the chances of doing damage to the brand. Using the wrong assets can pollute and dilute the brand. Mismatched brand assets can confuse customers and partners, and this isn't just talking about logos, but also templates and images that are part of the whole brand association. And this puts the entire investment in brand development at risk. Brand is almost a religion at some organizations, and for some organizations, it's really the big differentiator between them and their competition. So it's something that they spend a lot of money to develop, and it's something that they should be spending some money to help protect. And some of that money should be for a dam system. So here are some tactics that you can use. So one is measure and analyze. So this is more along the lines of the traditional digital asset management justifications, the ROI justifications. So calculate the traditional ROI, but present the numbers in a way that an MBA will respect. They're going to be looking at this from a competitive point of view, comparing with other projects. So you want to make sure that your numbers are really airtight. And you also want to measure the costs too. You want to be credible, you want to be realistic. I recommend measuring them and presenting them in 5-year terms. If you're looking at a on-site dam system with a perpetual license, usually the first year cost can be fairly high. In subsequent years, you're normally just paying for maintenance and maybe for additional users and some additional add-ons, things like that. But if you can present it in 5-year terms and then average it out, the average cost, even starting the first year, doesn't seem that high. This is also a good way to make sure that there'll be money in the budget in subsequent years to pay for any maintenance as well as any planned expansion. And when you're proposing new opportunities, be very specific. Try not to just give a whole laundry list of all the wonderful things that a dam can do, because it dilutes it and it's not very credible. Along those lines, also be realistic. It's easy to talk about all the pie in the sky things that a dam will do, but really try to find those things that are going to resonate within your organization and can actually be achievable. And if you're proposing that a dam is going to bring in new revenue, create new revenue streams, then have a real business plan. Lay out the revenue you expect quarter by quarter, when you see a break-in period, a profit period, if you see that coming, with all the expenses factored in, etc. Again, you want to be as credible as possible. If you can, fly under the radar. So see if you can find and pursue the quick win. And this would be, one pain point where you've got a single problem that a dam can solve, and on that basis alone, prove that there's a meaningful ROI. In this case, you want to minimize the input from others so it can reduce the requirements. And this is really a whole other topic about kind of best practices for deploying a dam within your organization. But if you can find a very focused and then therefore kind of low cost, low risk project for digital asset management, that can greatly increases the chances that you'll get it funded. And also at many organizations, budget levels have different thresholds. So if it's $25,000 or less, maybe it just needs a department manager's signature. If it's $100,000 or less, maybe it's a director level. And if it's $250,000, maybe it needs a VP or the CFO level. So maybe also find out what those levels are and see if you can come in with a useful dam to get it in the door that's going to get below a threshold that might be more difficult to achieve. Another tactic is to empathize with the decision maker, and maybe a more negative way to put that is to find the weakness, not just in the decision maker, but in the organization as well. So for example, learn what motivates the decision maker. What are their goals, either that they set for themselves or that's been set for them? Is it to increase sales? Is it to increase market share? Um, maybe there have been mistakes made in the past, either by the individual or the organization, and a motivation is not to repeat those mistakes. And maybe you can prove that having a dam will decrease the chances that those mistakes will be made again. Likewise, where does your organization feel vulnerable? And can you make an argument that having a dam will make them less vulnerable in that area? So you need to do your research. Also very important, get allies. For example, in the legal department, if you can convince somebody in the legal department that having a dam will decrease the liability that comes from misusing an asset, then that can be very valuable. Likewise with sales, if somebody high up in sales can vouch that having a dam will help them and their organization, their department be more effective and sell more, that can be a powerful ally. Likewise with marketing, likewise with IT, if you can get somebody there to say that having a dam will make their job easier of backing things up, making sure that things don't get lost. And especially security, if your organization is large enough and you have a dedicated security staff, and you can explain that having a dam will make it less likely that there's unauthorized use of assets and that there'll be reporting in an audit trail, that can be a very powerful ally to have as well. So to start summing it up, here's some of the actions that you can take. So again, measure what you can. Go through those traditional ROI measurements and see if you can get some hard, useful numbers. And do your research. Find opportunities and weaknesses, whether it's about the decision maker themselves or the organization as a whole. Where do they feel vulnerable, and where can you make the argument that a digital asset management system will make them less vulnerable in that area? And document and organize. You want to present it all in a very credible way. You want your argument to be as airtight and professionally presented as possible. I also suggest that you create an elevator pitch. You're probably not going to sell it or close it on an elevator pitch, but it helps to get allies from other departments. It helps maybe to get the face-to-face meeting that you need to help get that budget approval. So examples might be, if we get a dam, we'll reduce our storage costs by 20%, our stock photo licensing fees by 30%, and free up a staff position. So that would be a hopeful example of an elevator pitch. Maybe something a little bit more negative, but perhaps even more effective could be along the lines of, last year the wrong logo was used in an important campaign and we spent $50,000 needlessly licensing images because we didn't know what we already had. Without a dam, these kinds of things will keep happening. So of course you need the facts to back this up, but depending on your particular position, depending on the research that you've done, you should be able to come up with a fairly concise elevator pitch. And again, fly under the radar. Start small if you can. It's a little bit like the Trojan horse, but if you can get it into your organization, it'll be much easier to grow it in the future. And then lastly, get those important allies. If you don't feel like you're being heard, but you can get people high up in other departments to vouch that getting a dam will in fact either make their jobs easier or can corroborate the advantages that you're talking about, that can be very, very important. So while traditional ROI arguments might work, approval isn't always about the numbers. So go beyond traditional ROI arguments to get your dam budget approved. So I'm going to throw it open to questions in a minute, but first just a really quick commercial for Modula4. We're a leading provider of digital asset management and workflow solutions. Our clients include over 100 organizations in marketing, retail, entertainment, higher education, and government. We were founded in 2004 with offices in San Francisco Bay Area and Berlin, Germany. And our partners include Picture Park, Canto, Woodwing, 2Imagine, and Adobe, especially for their digital publishing suite, which is a tablet publishing solution. So I'm going to throw it open for questions now. So we're out of time. I want to thank you all very much for joining, and for everyone who's on this webinar and everyone who registered. You'll be getting an email in a few days that'll have a link to a video of this webinar as well as to a PDF of the presentation itself. So I want to thank you all again.